Hello and welcome. This is Mr. Kingston, and this is the Kingston's Perspective, where we stay informed and continue to grow. Here to talk with you concerning the perspective of government from a Judeo Christian lens. I know we are in a very polarized political environment. I'm 38 years old. Now, I remember a time 20 years ago when I was 18 where people get, somewhat argumentative with each other concerning who to vote for president, but it never got to this level. And it was just around election time. Now, this has permeated to all levels in our lives, right? Not only in our workplaces, houses of worship, down to families, when we leisure, when we watch movies or the news, down to our education. So the polarized political environment has like fractionalized our culture and our society to where we have two groups, right? And throughout history, we've always had this conflict between two groups. I'm gonna just go over a few of these groups that maybe you can relate to. The Baxters and the Rojos. I used to watch the spaghetti westerns. Clint Eastwood, right? That's a fistful of dollars, I believe. The Baxters and the Rojos, right? The Montagues and the Capulets. That's Shakespeare, right? With Romeo and Juliet. The Catholics versus the Protestants, right? In Europe. The Hatfields and the McCoys, right? For Western. The Republicans and Democrats in today's political environment. You have outliers out there. You have Green Party, you have Independents, um, Tea Party, etc., etc. But it's basically fractionalized into groups, right? And I guess it's just a human affinity to fractionalize and to associate with different groups. Now, the founders of our Constitution understood that government was a necessary evil, right? Necessary but evil. So they put checks and balances in place to kind of limit that what that potential evil can do. Now, we could talk about communism, we could talk about socialism, etc., etc. We could talk about all these different forms of government, but really it is our form of government, which is a republic, that and I mean you have parliament too, that includes checks and balances, right? So one group can't overthrow the other. Everybody needs to agree to a certain extent for it to work. Now, when we talk about necessary evil, unfortunately, that concept has all but been excluded in our political debates. We immediately go to two sides, and it's turned into like a football match or football game or basketball, whatever sport you want to use. We chair it like it's we're rooting for the home team, where we forget that we're all in this together. So these two groups they go at it. They uh, they go into these debates, and one tries to show the other's moral superiority over the other. I had even a discussion with my mother recently, and she loathes and disdains Donald Trump, right? Loathes and disdains Donald Trump, holds him in absolute contempt. And I made the position, and I argued the position, and I think this can help put things in perspective. I asked her a question. I said, if you don't pay your light bill, if you don't pay your mortgage, is the bank gonna come to your house and say, "Oh, you're a Republican, so we're not gonna take this house that you're not paying for"? When if you don't pay your light bill, is your utility company gonna come to your house and not turn off your lights because you're with one party or the other? She had to answer the logical conclusion. No, of course they're gonna take my house And of course, they're going to cut my power. And that's the whole perspective I'm trying to bring to bear today. That regardless of who you support or don't, you got to pay your bills. You got to earn your keep. You got to pay your way. No one's going to come to save you. They'll tell you that, and that's the point of our politics in this country, United States. They're gonna promise you candy, rainbows, sunshine if you vote for their party or for them. But in the end, you got to understand, regardless of which side of the political spectrum you're on, I don't care. You got to view government as a necessary evil, right? And not just the presidential elections, you got to be involved in your local elections. That's where really the rubber meets the road. The property taxes you're paying, whether you own your home or you rent, is going to dictate, what's going to happen in your neck of the woods. Now I'll end with this. It's a passage. I told you I'd come from a Judeo-Christian perspective, and something I'm going to recite to you is from this old book that nobody really wants to talk about. It's called the Bible, and the children of Israel wanted to move from a theocracy into a like a feudal, not feudal, but kings and queens, like a monarchy. So, like the other nations at that time were mostly kings and queens and things of that nature. So they wanted to be like them. They were a theocracy up until this point. And Samuel was a prophet. He told the Israelites what was going to come. And this is what government does, right? There will always be a king. These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. 1 Samuel chapter 8, 10 through 22. These will be the way the kings who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to be his chariots and to be his horsemen and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of fifties, and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and the equipment of his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He will take the tenth of your grain and your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants and female servants and the best of your young men and your donkeys and put them to work. He will take the tenth of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And in that day you will cry out because of your king whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. There's a lot of things to unpack in that passage. Touches on taxes, right? Touches on taking your best lands, right? Your best fields. Talks about taking your sons and daughters and putting them to his or her service, right? A lot to unpack in that. And we see that involved in all forms of government. The point I'm making is that government, is a necessary evil. Necessary, but evil. And if we lose perspective from whatever side of the aisle you're on, if you lose perspective that, hey, whoever I'm putting into office, I need to hold them accountable for the things that they ran on. If you want your politicians who you're putting in office to do gun control, right, and not just make talking points, then hey, put your politicians in office to do that, right? If you put your politicians in office to make sure that you have a quality education for your kids, or roads that don't have potholes and things of that nature. When you put them in office, you got to hold them accountable. If they don't abide by the things that they said he or she's going to do, you got to vote them out. Not just get so enamored in whose side you're on. You got to understand they're on their side. They're going to do for their people. That's also in the passage. And I had that conversation with my mother that, hey, the people who are in Trump's or Clinton's or Bush or whoever you want to pick, Reagan, going all the way back, they're going to look out for their people. They're going to look out for the people that got them in office. They're going to look out for their friends and you can call it old boy network. You can call it nepotism. You can call it whatever you want. But they're going to look out for their people. So my emphasis to you is to understand that concept and not be so quick to demonize somebody just because they disagree with you and they hold a different political perspective than you. This is Mr. Kingston. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what I had to say, please like and subscribe. If you didn't like what I had to say, comment at the bottom. We can talk about it.